I'd like to call this public hearing to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Rogan?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Gahn?
Here.
Mr. Wexler?
Here.
The purpose of said public hearing is to hear testimony and discuss the following. File of the Council, number 118, 2017, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the city of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the period beginning January 1, 2018.
I would like to thank OECD members for attending this evening's public hearing. Linda Abley, Tom Preambo, and Attorney Sean Gallagher. Mrs. Abley will present OECD's 2018 action plan. Linda?
Thank you. Thank you, City Council, for having us. It's very difficult. We received $5.4 million in applications, and we are only estimating. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We're only estimating that we probably will get 2.2 million. So there's a lot of hard decisions to make, and we had to look at what our high priority needs were in our 5-year consolidated plan. I provided City Council with an explanation of why we funded certain items. And of course, the Neighborhood Police Patrol is always a hot item. Everybody loves the Neighborhood Police Patrol. The West Scranton Reconstruction of Roads, we're joining with the West Side Revitalization. They received $2.5 million to redevelop a portion of Main Avenue in West Side. So when that job is completed, the city will go in, and it's a low-mod area, and we will do the roads and the sidewalks. We felt that was a good project to do. Of course, our reconstruction of roads with handicap curb cuts is always popular. The fire engine, we've been funding a fire engine for since 2015. And the fire department accidentally put $150,000 in, and the last payment's only $50,000. So that's why we just funded it for $50,000. The McLean Park, we funded that in. That's also a high priority. In 2017, it was awarded $150,000, and this year they requested $200,000. So with the 150 and another 100,000, we thought we could do a good project for $250,000. The owner-occupied housing rehab program. We usually fund this under the home program. However, what we're finding, a lot of people need emergency housing, new furnaces, new chimneys, like emergency work to do right away. But under the home program, you cannot do emergency work. You have to bring the whole home up to code. So that's why we thought we'd fund $75,000 for the emergency housing. Demolition, we still have approximately $80,000 from last year, so we funded that for $25,000, so that would give them approximately $100,000. The ARC is a new application. They own a property and they want to make, I believe it's a handicap porch. Wasn't it a handicap porch, Todd? Yeah. NEPA youth shelters, also a new application, and we like to get new applications in, that we're not funding everybody the same year. They want to put ADA compliant on a property on Wyoming Avenue. Center for Independent Living is also a new project that we fund, and that's also a public service. We can't go over, and I think I have it marked. No, I don't. I think $350,000 for the public service cap. Any questions do you have?
I have a few here, a few that we talked about already, Mr. Preambo and Ms. Abley. To start, as you mentioned, one of the most popular items on this list is the paving. Could you talk a little bit more about the paving list, how much has been done over the years?
Tom could probably answer that better than me.
Sure. That's a very good question, Councilman Rogan. Actually, the City of Scranton in the OECD office spends a substantial amount of its money each year on reconstruction of roads, which includes handicap accessible curb cuts. I actually have that information. Some of it's in my head, so just bear with me if I have to look at my paper. But in the last 7 years, we've spent approximately, $7.6 million on road construction. And that includes 415 city blocks and 137 new handicap ADA accessible curb cuts. The $7.6 million does not include the administration and engineering services. That would also be an additional cost. Okay, that
So
we
that's,
had.
I think for all of us up here, one of the biggest complaints
Right.
we always receive is the conditions of the roads in the city, and they have been improving. But just so it's out there, so the public knows how much money has been spent through our block grant money in low to moderate income areas on these programs. Secondly is the $261,000 for 4 police officers, and I know the answer to the question, but just so the public knows as well, because we do get questions on why these officers can only go in certain areas of the city. So could you address that more for the public than the council?
Yeah, the national objective, they only can go into low and mod income areas with a census tract of 51% low mod. So, I mean, that's how it's eligible.
Right. Two more questions, then I'm done. Lost my place here, I apologize. And again, this one we've spoken about already, but again, just for the public, 'cause I already have some individuals that mentioned this to us. Post 25 VFW, there was an application put in for phase 2 of a memorial park, and it wasn't funded. Can you explain, again, for the public, why that project
Yeah, this was
not
the
funded?
most difficult and agonizing one that we had. We looked at it very closely, and the number one reason, as you know, every 5 years we do our 5-year consolidated plan, and we have to report to HUD what activities we're going to do for the next 5 years. This activity, and I don't mean the exact activity, like the overall, like we include paving, homeless, items like that. But a memorial park is not included in our consolidated plan, so it would not be eligible.
So if council wanted to fund this project in the future, it would first have to go onto the consolidated plan.
Correct. And then HUD would have to approve it. However, you have to be careful of monument parks, because monuments are statues, monuments, they're only eligible as a ornamental, like just a piece of the
Right.
project, not the whole thing.
So we can't use, and again, this is a little off topic, but something myself and Councilman Wexler were speaking about during the week, we couldn't use these funds for the Duffy Monument as well, when Duffy Park reopens.
Well, I don't know if that's low income.
Again, yeah, same thing. We
I'd
wouldn't
have
be-
to see
Right.
just to do that? No.
Right.
Right.
And then the last question, I do see that there's still $80,000 left from demolition of hazardous structures. Is there anything that needs to be done on council's end to get that money moving? Because there's certainly not a lack of properties that need to be demolished in the city.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Councilman Rogan, I don't mean to interrupt you, just for a reference point, the $80,000 is from last year, 2016's allocation. 2017 is for $200,000. It hasn't arrived yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to touch base on that, the fact that we went through this last year and we have not received any money. If you could just go into that a little bit.
I went to the HUD's annual meeting last week in Philadelphia, and that was the hot topic. Where's our money? And it's just not the city of Scranton, and HUD has not received it yet. Congress has not appropriated the money. They told us what we're going to get, but they have not signed off on it, and we have not received even our contracts yet.
Yeah, so everything
So-
that was approved last year, nothing has happened with
Yeah,
that
and I
yet because
sort
the
of feel
funding is-
silly, here I'm going forward with the 2018, and we didn't get the 2017 yet. And the one other question that was asked when I was at HUD, you've heard me talk about our timeliness. November 2nd is our timeliness deadline. If we get our allocation, say the third week of October, we won't be timely. So I can't see us getting it before November 2nd. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, so the biggest impact on that right now is the paving that was.
the paving,
is
right.
unlikely to
We
occur.
bid it out, the contracts are ready, but we cannot move forward until we get the money.
And the holdup is in Congress, is that where the holdup is?
And many of the cities reached out to their congressmen and senators, and they just haven't signed off on it yet.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to mention in the regular meeting, that we send a letter to Senator Casey, Senator Toomey, and Congressman Cartwright. And for the public that's watching, it's important to contact your congressmen and senators and urge them to continue to support CDBG funding.
Correct.
Because as you could see, this is money that really goes right back into the neighborhoods to help the residents, whether it's police patrols, paving, a number of these organizations. So it's very important. It's something the city really depends on. Thank you.
Excuse me 1 second, just a correction to what I said. It's not 200,000. We submitted 200,000. Council adjusted it to 150. So there's 150 for 2017. I just remembered that as we were talking.
Yes, I have a few questions. Thank you. First question is about the Scranton Veterans Memorial Park that you just mentioned you won't be able to fund. Did anyone from OECD have any conversations or consult with anyone from the VFW prior to them submitting their application?
Yes, I talked to Paul Ahern. He came into my office, and he said $289,000. Well, we only get 2.2 million. I told him, most likely you would not get that amount of money. I also asked him how much the school district, because it is on school district land, they did not submit an agreement between the school district and them in their application. The school district was not going to put in $1.
Were they made aware that their activity wasn't going to be consistent with the five-year
No, not at the
consolidated
time,
plan?
because I didn't know until I got their application. I did tell them to submit it, and we'd have to look at the whole picture.
Okay. The demolition application, I was just reviewing it earlier. Is there a list of potential properties that are supposed to be demolished? Because I didn't see it in the application.
They're not in the application. When they submit the application, when licensing and permit submits the application, they just submit for the funding.
Okay,
And then licensing and permits have to do all their legal on each property and
okay,
to see if they're eligible.
right.
They may have a potential list, but I do not have that.
Okay. What I was trying to understand is, if they submit the application and they're asking for $25,000, how do you know what to fund them for exactly if you don't have a list of properties and any, like, backup documentation?
We usually bid out 10 properties at a time,
Mhm.
and then they bid on them, each individual property. And then if we don't have enough money, we knock the amount, certain properties off.
Okay, so the $25,000 they're asking for, that's just based on a list that they have, a proposed list, but they don't include it in the application?
Go ahead.
Hang on, just
I don't get it.
as an accurate reference, they asked for 800,000.
Mhm.
Linda allocated 25,000.
Right.
Because there's 150,000 that's left. But yes, to answer your question, we don't know the properties.
Okay.
They don't provide that.
Okay. Thank you. The rental rehab program that you have funded here for $97,500.
Yep.
Can you just explain the basis for creating, because this is a new program apparently, can you explain the basis for creating that program And what data did you use to determine the need for that specific amount of funding?
In 2007, did we fund it in 2017? No, 16. We have 50,000 from a previous year, and we're still looking for a good landlord to be a pilot program. And the rental rehab program was very popular back in the 90s when I first started with OECD. And then they discontinued it. HUD discontinued the funding. But I thought it was a very good program because the landlords are putting some of their money into it. If we'll do up to 4 units right now until we get it all started. We will match the property owners 10,000, 10 and 10 for each unit. If there's lead-based paint in there, we'll provide them another 2,500. They have to rent it to income-eligible people under the 60% median income, and also there's rent controls. I felt it was a good program because I feel like there's a lot of rental properties that have lead-based paint, number one, and they need fixing up just like the single-family homes.
Okay. If someone participates in this program and the project is complete, and then later the owner of the property converts it to a single residential use, how is that monitored by your staff, and what effect does that have with the program funds?
We have to, well, number one, there'll be a lien on the property. It'll either be probably a 10 or 15-year lien. We have to monitor every 1 or 2 years all the tenants' incomes. So we monitor the whole project for the life of the lien.
Okay, so they'll have to submit documentation every so often?
It's just like when we did Skyview Apartments. I still have to get the annual housing reports from them and all their incomes.
Okay, so the tenant has to be low to moderate income for
At
this whole thing to work?
60%, correct.
Okay. If a tenant moves, who's going to check to see if the new tenant coming in is low to
We
moderate
monitor.
income?
That
Okay,
will be in our agreement.
so they'll have to submit something, or, okay. All right, and one last question. The Center for Independent Living is getting $5,000. In the description, it says that OECD must be very cautious with this activity, that we are only serving Scranton residents. Can you explain this, and how do you monitor that?
Do you want to answer that one? We funded the Friendship House, and we learned from there that a lot of families are from outside the area. So we only could fund, even though they're in this program and the building is located in Scranton, we only could fund the portion that are Scranton residents. Does that make sense to you?
That makes sense. How do you, I'm just curious how you do that.
Well, we're going to have to work with them very carefully.
Okay,
We didn't get to that point yet.
okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, I just have a couple of questions. The first-time homebuyers program is funded at $75,000 this year. Is there carryover from last year as far as money that was unspent?
I'm sorry, what?
Is there a carryover from last year, any money that was unspent?
I believe I have, I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you know how many
I can get that
applicants
information
there were
for
last
you.
year? Well, I should say 2016 and 2017 year-to-date?
I can get that information for you.
Okay. Could you explain a little bit of the rehab program for the homeowners? How that
For
works?
the home program?
Yeah. The homeowner housing rehab program.
Yeah. Single family only under the home program. They have to be under the 80% median income. Their taxes have to be paid, their garbage, their utilities. Then we go in, and the one thing we're finding very hard under the home program, and this is one of the reasons I created the rental rehab, is it has to be brought up to code. And these homes, I feel we're putting too much money into, $70,000.
Wow.
But we have to, how do you turn them away? We have to bring the house up to code or it's not eligible
Okay.
for home funding. So we're finding it very difficult, that program.
So you can somebody's eligible if they're up to 80% of the median income. Why is it only 50% in the rental rehab then? Is there a reason for that, or is that
The
just...
rentals are different. Rental rehab is different.
Well, I know it's a different program, but is that a HUD initiative that
Yeah.
says 50%? It's not a policy of the office,
No,
it's a HUD
that's
thing?
a-
Okay. All
HUD
right.
reg.
One quick question on, there was it was proposed for $500,000 for the economic development activities, and what was funded was $75,000. Is there a rationale why that was reduced to that amount? Because that, I think, is the only application in this entire program that addresses economic development.
Probably the main reason is because when you, you get $5.5 million, we have to reduce.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, you know, when we have $2.2 million and we're only allocating $75,000 for economic development, I think that's certainly on the low end.
Are you ready for a zinger?
Yeah, give it to me.
I actually have, we actually have a little over $1 million available.
Seriously?
Yes.
Okay. Well, good to know.
300,000 is only a 4% loan.
All right.
The balance could be a loan to grant through our business and industry loan to grant program. So that was the rationale to answer your question, Councilman Evans.
Which is certainly justified, and that's a great program, so I think we need to do a better job, all of us, to beat the bushes and get people applying for those kind of loans or the grant-to-loan program, or
Right.
loan-to-grant program, I
We
should say.
we have quite a bit of interest.
Yeah.
We have quite a bit in the boiler room right now that we're working on. Over the past couple of years, we've actually done quite a substantial amount of money. We've actually spent in the last 3 years $514,000 in a loan-to-grant program. And that was to assist 5 local businesses in the city. So, and 2 of which, actually 3 of which are new businesses to Scranton. They came from an existing location outside of Scranton, and they came into Scranton. And one of the biggest attractions was the loan-to-grant program.
Exactly.
All right, so there's quite a bit of success. It was $514,000, and that secured, by commitment, 18 full-time equivalent jobs, plus there was a fallout to that. We actually got a few more.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, very good. That's all I have for now.
I just have one additional question. And I think you did address this last year, but I just want to revisit it for a moment. You're scoring these applications, so you have a process in place where you go through and you score each one of them according to some criteria. So the Licensing and Inspections Department submits the application for demolition of hazardous structures. It says that the OECD score is 70%. Why is that?
Well, we funded it number 1 because it's a high priority. Some of the applications aren't filled out like we like them.
Well, I have to be honest with you. I have this application in front of me right now, and I don't understand it. There's no backup to it. I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. And it's a city department, so how can't they fill the application out and get 100% on it? That's what I don't get.
I didn't give them 100%.
No, I know, but I mean, how can't you get 100% on that?
That's why they didn't get 100%.
Right.
But it is a high priority need.
Well, what I would like to see personally is when they're going to submit an application, it says location of proposed project throughout the city. Well, they have to be a little more specific, I think, with what properties they're going to be demolishing. And they intend to use this money to demolish properties, and you said they have a proposed list.
So that legally, they don't know which ones they're going to do, that are going to be ready to go.
Right.
Because we do title searches, we have to contact all the property owners. After we get the title searches, we have to write letters to everyone that has a lien on the property. So at the time of the application, we don't have all that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So that's why you're just funding the funds for now.
Okay.
And then we do all the legal after.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing I want to go back to is the economic development. Tom said we have over $1 million. We met with the Economic Development Administration about a month ago.
Yes.
And their program, and I asked them about 6 months ago if we could turn it into a loan-to-grant program, and they said, no, we have to keep it at a 4% interest. What would you do? Go with the loan-to-grant program or the 4%? So what we're doing is, I'm in the process, I did it yesterday, I'm writing to all the banks. And the ones that have, like, they could get the loan at the bank, but they might have just a little squeaky there, like more, something wrong with their credit or anything. EDA said they're the ones that they like to fund, more a high risk. So that's why we're looking at that. That's why we have, I think, $300,000 in that.
So is HUD saying that on a going forward basis?
That's EDA.
It's what?
It's Economic Development Administration.
Okay, all right. Now, the money that you mentioned before, the $1 million plus, that can still be
That's
used
part of
for a
that.
loan to grant, right?
The 300,000 EDA funds is included in that.
Including that, all right.
Right.
Okay. That's it.
We do have a few people who signed in. If you're not signed in, you still can speak if, once we complete the sign-in list. So I'll just go through this as they signed in. First name on here is Patrick Ahern.
Good evening, City Council. And ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Pat Ahern. I'm a volunteer with VFW Post 25. I'm here in support of their application. This is Dave Roman. He's a member of Post 25, volunteer on our Veterans Committee also. I have some handouts for City Council, if I may.
Thank you. Oops. If you leave one for Mr. Perry also. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll make sure he gets it. Thank you. Thanks.
I have a few talking points, if I may. 2 years ago, myself and other veterans got together because we noticed that there are actually hundreds of Scranton veterans who died in a war, died in defense of freedom, who have never been named on a local monument. It's hard to believe, really, but I'll repeat that. Hundreds of Scranton veterans who died in defense of freedom, have never been named on a local monument. We're going to make that right. We're going to make it right with or without City Council's help. Now, of course, we're here to ask for your help. We're not going to quit on this. There's no way possible us veterans are going to quit on this project, okay? Now, we have a beautiful site. The site that was given to us by the school district is perfect. We love it. It's right in the middle of low, moderate income areas. There's all kinds of young people, old people, everybody. Walking around that area, not just from Scranton, but from outside of the city because of the football stadium and the trail, the running trail, and riverfront and so forth. So it's a perfect spot. They gave us a great arrangement. I really have to thank the school district. And it's all in writing. It's good forever. Now, it's such a good spot because really this is an educational park. That's what this park ultimately is going to be all about. Educating our young people, our people from Scranton and outside the area on what these men and women who are going to be named on the monument. There'll be over 900 named. As I said, around 400 have never been named, but there'll be 900 total. Because there are other beautiful monuments in the city that have some of the veterans named on them. Now, the site, I can't say enough about that. Phase 1, if you look at the site map there, it's color-coded. You see Phase 1, that's already funded. We received a $100,000 grant through the LSA program. Senator John Blake was very helpful in getting that grant, and we thank him for that. Phase 1 we already had the survey, and right now it's with the architect who did this here drawing for us, and they're working on the specs to put out for bid in January. So Phase 1 will be completed in the spring. There's no question about that. And as you can see, that's color-coded, and it's really nice. We have a walkway coming in from the stadium gate there. We're going to call that Veterans Way, okay? We feel that's an appropriate name for that walkway. Now, if you look at the orange colored markings here, that's...
Yeah, Mr. Hearn, we have a time limit, so I'll give you another couple minutes, but we have other people and we have to
Okay,
also-
all right,
we have to
I'll
be-
move it along.
We have to be done for our meeting at 6:30.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I don't have that much more to do, but I think what I have is important, if I may. The orange markings on here are Phase 2. That's what we're asking specifically for the city to fund. Now, we don't see everything on there because there's also included in the city funding would be a request for lighting, security, and the actual design cost, okay? So there's a few other things that are not on there in the orange that we're asking for the city's help on. Now, as you can see, this is a big project for a group of veterans to raise funds on our own with fundraising. We need the city's help. And the step we're asking you to help us with, Phase 2, that's a big step. That will really interject some, a good positive momentum for this project. We're going to complete it. We can't not do this. It's too important. And we feel that the only thing else I can say about the city is these men and women were from the city. They were residents. They didn't actually die for the city of Scranton. They died for America. But I think it's our responsibility. Most of them are from World War II. There's no question about it. Most of these names that are never been named before are going to be from World War II. And that has the most names in total. And we just think it's time that we as a city did something that could recognize that. Okay? I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Abel, I have a quick question for you on this project. Would there be any way that we could, the city could seek a special exception from HUD to alter the consolidated plan to maybe include something like this? Would we be able to request that from HUD?
Sorry.
And I asked that question because I agree with what Mr. Hearn said, that I think this is a great project, number one. And number two, from an educational perspective, the fact that these students can see and understand the sacrifice of these men and women, I think, is particularly important.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
Yeah,
I don't
no.
want you to think I don't like this project. But, yes, you can change your consolidated plan, okay? It's a lot of work on our part. However, we still have a concern that there's caps on the monumental part.
Can we
Like
get...
it's all monuments.
Right. Can we get a specific answer from HUD, if it would be possible. I think the next time this has to come up is in November, so we have a little bit of time to check into that at least.
I could ask. I don't know if I'll have an answer for you by November. though.
I would appreciate that, because if there's any
Yeah.
way that we could at least fund this,
Yeah.
if not in whole, at least for a portion of it, like Mr. Ahern said, to put some activity into it and get some,
Well, the only thing I can say to add to that is in the beginning, when we first decided that we would seek grants for this, we did read as much as we could and researched, and, it's our feeling that it's not just the monument, although the monument is the centerpiece, of course.
Right.
But it's an educational park. There's a lot to this, with the American flag station and all the other flags going up. It's, we feel that it should qualify. I mean, I just think we have a case here that being in a low mod area, and you can see from the monument that it's going to be an educational park. I'm just hoping that there's not a technicality, that there is going to stop us from
no, I
getting
agree.
funding.
I think it's important, if we could, Mrs. Abley, if it's possible, at least to get a definite answer from HUD to see if there is an ability to get a special exception to the consolidated plan, and then if that would be able to be funded.
Okay, and
That would
just
be
think
great.
about this now, and I think when you came to my office, I told you wanted $295,000. And my first reaction was, wow, you probably would not get that amount of money. But if city council wanted to fund $295, you have to think, who are you going to take away from here? You remember me telling you that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand that there's other projects.
And say we funded it, just say, I'm just using a number, $75,000, and you need $200,000 more. What time frame? We have a timeliness thing we have to deal with HUD. How long would it take for you to get $220,000 more to complete the project?
I don't understand.
If we only funded the project, say, for $75,000, and you're asking for $295,000, that's a $220,000 gap. Where would you get the other additional
Well,
funding
the way
without
we would-
holding our money up?
The way we would approach that is, if city council were to give us any X amount of money, we could spend that money on something. That phase doesn't have to be done all in one.
We
The
have
American
to-
flag station, just by itself, maybe $40,000. Benches are, so much for a bench, so that the park itself does not have to be done phase one, phase two, phase three.
If we funded phase two, we'd have to see the whole project and budget. You just can't just order
We can
benches.
show you the whole project is right on here,
Yeah, I think, Mr. Ahern, unfortunately.
But if you only gave us a certain amount of money and told us we had to spend that in a certain amount of time, then we could do that.
We'd have to see the whole project.
I think we're getting ahead of
Yeah, I
ourselves here,
think
but if...
really right
if-
now, we have, Mrs. Abley's going to check into what possibilities are for some adjustments to the federal guidelines. We're not going to accomplish that this evening, and I hate to rush you along, but we do have other applications that we have to hear from also.
One comment before you leave, and I agree completely with Councilman Gaughan's suggestion and your suggestion. If HUD will grant that waiver, I think all of us up here would like to find money, and I think there's some money we can find for this project. But as was mentioned, step one is seeing if we could get the waiver from HUD. I completely support the idea of sending that letter to see if there's something we could do to get an exception. So once that goes out, and this isn't going to be finalized tonight. There is a comment period, so this will be tabled tonight. There'll be a comment period, and if it takes, we all know how the federal government runs. If it takes longer to get a response, I am okay with waiting till we get that response to make a final decision on our allocations. So you have that commitment from us.
Well, we'll cooperate whatever way we can, of course, so I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peg Ruddy?
Good evening. My name is Peg Ruddy. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Resource Center here in Scranton. The Women's Resource Center is celebrating our 40th year of service to Scranton and all of Lackawanna County this November. And to date, we have served 59,036 women and children and men, the majority of those Scranton residents over the past 40 years in our program. I consider us to be part of a public safety movement. I'm here tonight to advocate on behalf of all of the survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in Scranton. We have actually 2 applications in to OECD. One is a request for $46,000 to fund our safe housing program to provide rapid rehousing and homeless prevention services for victims of domestic violence. And just to highlight the need, last year in all 3 of those programs, the Women's Resource Center provided 11,000 nights. The majority of those, 76% of those, were in Scranton. So I'm hoping that we can continue that good work and that we are successful at receiving $46,000, actually it's $46,018 for those housing programs. In addition, Women's Resource Center is requesting an additional $10,000 through the Community Development Block Grant funding. And when I hear some of the larger figures, I'm just hoping there's a way that a couple of those projects might be able to shave a couple $1,000s here or there to provide 11,000 nights of safe house. Really stretches us, and so we're really looking to diversify our funding and get more funding in so that we can really keep our fellow Scranton residents safe. Pick up the paper any morning in Scranton and you'll read about a woman or a child being battered. We are the only game in town. We are the only service provider that can provide this service. So I respectfully request that both of our applications are funded. Thank you. Yes?
I just have one quick question. You said 11,000
Nights.
Do you have an idea of how many victims you serve
Yes.
over that?
Yes, we just did our annual report, and last year it was 1,968 victims.
Wow.
And again, the majority of those, we have to collect zip codes as part of our reporting for all of our funders, and so, most of our funders. And so we're able to track where they're coming from, and the majority of our clients are from Scranton.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Maureen Maher-Gray. I'm a resident of the city of Scranton. I'm also the executive director of the new NEPA Youth Shelter. We were just established last summer, and the mission of our shelter is to provide quality emergency shelter and related services to unaccompanied youth ages 14 through high school graduation. Our shelter will provide essentials such as food, clothing, bathrooms, as well as services such as educational support, counseling, family reunification, and/or preparation for independent living. With a focus on social justice and advocacy, the shelter will be welcoming to youth from all backgrounds, and especially affirming to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer youth. Here are some startling national statistics about homeless youth. There are over 1.3 million youth in our country who are considered homeless without adult supervision. They are at a higher risk for physical abuse, mental health problems, substance abuse, assault, illness, and sexual exploitation or suicide, 75% of runaways are female. Approximately 30% of runaways identify as LGBT. 75% of all homeless youth are at risk for dropping out of school, and I find those statistics alarming. In the Scranton area, at the end of 2016, there were 32 identified homeless students in grades 9 through 12. People connected to the youth population in our city estimate that there are probably about the same number of additional homeless students who are living in the shadows. Our organization is seeking to do something constructive to address this problem. We realize our mission is a huge undertaking, especially without concrete data on these teens living in the shadows. We decided to start with an after-school teen drop-in center. The center will be open to all teens in our area, and we expect that when homeless students who are not in the foster care program learn about us, they will come to our center and use the amenities we are providing. We were able to secure a location just 4 blocks from Scranton High School at 541 Wyoming Avenue, and we will be welcoming all teens to our center, but we're going to keep a close eye out for teens who may have housing issues. While we are refurbishing over 6,000 square feet of space into a teen center, we have one glaring problem. One of the bathrooms is a holdover from a Head Start program, and it was built for toddlers. The toilets are on platforms and frankly couldn't accommodate a teenager or a person in a wheelchair. We are seeking funds through the Community Development Block Grant Program to completely gut this bathroom and replace it with an ADA compliant bathroom with a full shower, an extra powder room, and laundry facilities. The estimate to gut the existing bathroom, completely replumb 2 toilets and 2 sinks, add a shower, and new plumbing for laundry facilities, update the electrical needs, and add a dryer vent duct, paint and tile, the whole space will cost approximately $29,000. I think the money is worth it when we will be serving a diverse and nearly invisible population. I would like to invite you also to an open house we're having this Friday evening, tomorrow night, from 5 to 8 p.m., so you can get a preview of our location and see what we are going to be offering. I hope you see the value in what we're going to accomplish, and I hope you will vote for our CDB application. Thank you. May I give you our brochure, just so you have some more information?
Is there anyone else? Thanks, Maureen.
Joan Hodawan at Scranton. Before you leave, I'm curious as to how your new organization interfaces or duplicates services from the county level. I believe the county has youth and family services. Perhaps you could just explain.
Sure. We are not providing overnight shelter yet. What we're providing is an after-school program. Children and Youth Services does not have an after-school program.
Joan, this is really your comment period.
Okay. I was just curious since she was up here. I just want to say, of all the programs listed, especially under Community Development Block Grant Program, how impressed I am with the Neighborhood Police Patrol. I was robbed in 2015, so I don't have particularly a lot of sympathy with the criminal element. That being said, I think the best way to approach crime in the city of Scranton is whatever we could do to prevent it. Because once the crime's committed, you have a victim with all those costs that are entailed. You have police costs with chasing the culprit and apprehending them and all that good garbage. You got court costs, and then you got prison costs. So I see this Neighborhood Police Patrol as a great return on investment for any money that we invest into it, because I think you get a big bang for your buck here, as you do on all these programs. But the police have been doing a very good effort on this, and I think a spin-off on this is the positive publicity and relationships that are built between the police department and the community. And there's an element of trust that goes down to the youngest children all the way up through the elderly. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in and saying I would like to see this program continue, and you ever get more money, expand it. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, this will conclude this public hearing. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Rogan?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Gahn?
Here.
Mr. Wexler?
Here. Mr. Perry has a family emergency this evening. That's why he's not in attendance.
I would like to make a motion to take from the table file of the council number 116, 2017, and place into seventh order for final passage.
Second.
On the question, this piece of legislation is the capital budget for 2018. Anyone who wishes to speak on this piece of legislation may do so during fourth order, citizens' participation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved. Dispense with reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, Tax Assessor's Results Report for hearing date held September 13, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3B, Tax Assessor's Report for hearing date to be held October 25, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3C, check received from Lutherwood in the amount of $6,000 for payment in lieu of taxes.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3D, agenda for City Planning Commission meeting held September 27, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3E, correspondence received from Thomas J. Anderson and Associates Incorporated regarding the 2018 financial requirement and minimum municipal obligation.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed.
3F, check received in the amount of $288,095.71 that represents reimbursement for Fire Department Safer Grant expenditures.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have announcements at this time?
Yes, I have one. Just reminding everyone to make it out to the North Scranton Neighborhood Association Watch, the annual fundraiser Oktoberfest, which is going to benefit the community throughout the year. It's going to be held October 7th from 6 to 10 p.m. at the Polish Club on 1817 Brick Avenue in Scranton. Tickets are $15. It includes food, drink, and entertainment. There will also be a basket raffle and 50-50. Thank you.
I have one. There will be an informational program on property tax reassessment and ballot questions. It would be co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, the Pennsylvania Economy League, and the Political Science Department of the University of Scranton. It will be held Saturday, October 7th at 1 p.m. in the Kane Forum, second floor of Leahy Hall, on the corner of Linden and Jefferson on the University of Scranton campus.
This Saturday will be the dedication ceremony of the General Theodore J. Wint Bridge on Rockwell Avenue. The dedication will take place at 12:45 p.m. Members of the VFW Post 25 will participate as they're celebrating their 100th anniversary on Tuesday. Also, as a reminder, if you pay your refuge bill in two payments, the second payment is due tomorrow, September 29th. That's the last time that City Hall will be open before October the 1st, to avoid any penalty. Before I open up the citizens' participation, I'd just like to ask members of the audience to please refrain from having conversations among yourself. If you have to discuss something with someone, please go out in the hall. We're having a problem with the noise coming up the front so we're having a problem with our stenographer getting proper information from the audience participation and also from city council. So if you have comments to make amongst yourself, please leave the room. It's becoming quite a distracting problem for us.
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
John Foley?
Good evening, gentlemen. I like your rules of concept. This is the first time I've seen it. Should have put it out there a long time ago. I will try not to be as cantankerous as some people think I am. First, I'd like to apologize to Mr. Wexler. If I had any impact on your not being reelected to participate in the November election, I apologize. It was not meant to be.
You only needed to talk to 82 more people, John. You had to change 82 more minds before the election, that's all.
I apologize to council because I was under the misguided opinion that you were primarily responsible for a lot of what has gone on over the last 2-3 year period. I have changed my opinion that you are not primarily responsible. Now, with that said, I have started to go through my files and pull out things that have been in there for a while. I've looked at the 3-year recovery plan, and I will tell you that I am disappointed in the plan. First and foremost, the only reduction significantly in operating expenses that have caused close to a balanced budget for the 3-year period ended December 31st, 2012, is the elimination of COLA for retired employees. That's it. That's the only thing in there that got anywhere near a break even. There are things that were not in the plan that are equally disturbing. The plan does not address the 3 major pieces of litigation against the city. First and foremost, the Act 511, which I believe will strip out at least $8 million worth of revenue from the city on an annual basis. The PL plan was issued at the end of June 2017. The Court of Common Pleas ruled that the city's position was not correct. The city's going to appeal it. They'll go to the higher court, as they have in a number of other litigations, and lost. It is time that the city take some responsibility and actually create a plan for the next 3-year period. You have 3 options, as I see it. You will raise taxes, like it or not. You may have to borrow money, like it or not. Failing those 2, at some point over the next couple of year period, the city will slip into receivership with no help from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which is currently experiencing its own financial problems. I would dare suggest to you, you take some of my remarks, go to the city business administration, the outside financial advisors, and set the plan in motion now. Don't wait for the problem to occur. Deal with it now. Unappealing as it may be, you are probably going to have to raise taxes. So with that, I need to go back to Music Lake, have dinner with my wife. Gentlemen, you have yourself a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Foley. Lee Morgan?
Good evening, Council. Lee Morgan. You know, that was an enjoyable conversation we just had with Mr. Foley, but the problem is that the average residents in this city knew this for the last 25 years, that this was the way this was going to roll out. The sad part is we kept electing people with cheap suits on. Well, maybe they weren't that cheap, but, you know, who had no leadership ability. And it's taken us right to where we are. And there's still no leadership ability here. And the voters are going to vote soon. I find it mind-boggling, but I think that what really has to happen for the average working person is that the taxes have to definitely be cut. The wage tax has to go away, no matter what happens to the city, because the residents shouldn't be paying a 2% wage tax to the city. Well, a little more than 2, but I mean, it's beyond ridiculous. The 2.4% we give to the city itself is like throwing money out a window. And nothing good has come out of it in all the time it's been collected, except to give the city the ability to spend money and prop up all these silly little games they play. And it's been going on for so long that it's ridiculous. And all the residents' properties are really just about worthless, because this council has sat here and other ones and done nothing. I think, honestly, it's that the residents of this city have to realize that what Janet Evans did to the parking authority was the best piece of legislation that ever came out of this council. And all the other garbage that we've seen has just buried us further and further. We're feeding nonprofits as the residents of this city go hungry. It's ridiculous. And there's never really a comment coming from the council. You just sit there like cigar store Indians, just, I don't know what your purpose really is, except for the ability to hold a meeting, legislate something through the council, and spend money or transfer money. Because for the life of me, I don't remember anything really worthwhile coming out of this council for a long time. We have pools that have been closed for years, that are an asset that, well, allegedly belong to the residents, haven't been repaired. We're putting more development in the downtown. Buy a building downtown and get a ton of money, either from the state, the federal government, and don't worry, because the city will be a conduit for it. It's ridiculous. Not one answer to the problem. And I disagree with the attorney that just stood here, because the sale of the sewer authority goes back to this council. All the bad borrowing goes back to this council and previous councils who borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. The parking garages they knew they couldn't pay for. They legislated it through the council and built them. The council is the problem. You're supposed to be a counterbalance. And Mr. Wessler, you know, you losing the election was a great thing. I hope Mr. Rogan can possibly get knocked off, and maybe we can get something done here, because, you know, I'm not a politically partisan person, but at almost 60 years old, and after coming to this council for decades, watching a parade of incompetent public leaders march through here, it gets to the point where it's ridiculous. And then you wonder why people don't vote. Because you're just the next ship of fools. You come in here with some kind of grand idea, don't exercise the power of council, don't hold the mayor accountable, don't work for the residents of the city. You know, I saw a remarkable thing in the Scranton Times editorial page. Somebody talked about the street signs, and if we had any pride in our city, we'd do something about it. We did. Mayor Doherty spent a ton of money on garbage, okay, and took down street signs that were probably here for 50 years that you could read instead of replacing. The couple had to be replaced, and they're all faded. And you look at the boondoggle down at the Scranton Lace building where some arsonist was going to burn it down to the ground, I guess. But, you know, we wanted to give people grant money, and they came in there and they cut all the metal out of the building, and now it's an eyesore, just like North Scranton was. And the junior high school was never fixed until they just got enough taxpayers' money out of it to put it together. But anything that means anything to the resident city, like the Southside Sports Complex, built with Section 70 money, which was never to be sold ever, was sold. You've just looted the city, and bankruptcy's coming. And I hope that the residents of this city realize that they had an obligation to come forward and demand change of this government, and they did nothing, so they got nothing.
Pedro Annis?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Get my document. I have to read this, but it's a press release.
If you would just state your name, please.
Okay, my name is Pedro Aness, and I chair the Scranton Human Relations Commission. And I just like to make an announcement. Oh, God. Productivity tools. I apologize for this. I had it on the screen, and I got to download it again. I just want to make an announcement that the Scranton Human Relations Commission will be holding its first public meeting on Monday, October the 2nd, here at Chambers at 6 p.m. We will caucus, the commission will caucus at 5:30. The second announcement is that it has to do with the Puerto Rico situation in Puerto Rico, and some citizens of Scranton joined together and are putting a collection for food and health and safety items to donate or to send to the people that desperately need it in Puerto Rico, who are U.S. citizens. Everyone's seen the news. That will be coordinated at Nayog Park on Sunday, October 1st. It'll be at Nayog Park from 2 to 7. At 7, we're going to have a vigil, so some of the local organizations will be there with the candlelight vigil. Part of the is not only for the people of Puerto Rico, but the family members of folks here in the city of Scranton, to include my own family. That's that's stranded there. Okay. And also a reminder, I'm U.S. Army retired military, and a reminder that we have several million Puerto Rican soldiers in combat. They just can't come back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ron Ellman?
Good evening, Council. What happened about the couple $1 million that was the garbage fee money? I never heard I never heard nothing else about it, except the city was charged too much. I mean, did it disappear like that dollar I've been talking about for the past 2 weeks, or what? Year after year, Court Rights Friends Helping Friends program hasn't done nothing except protect a bunch of tax cheats all over this city. These are all the supporters of this administration, and of course they oppose any political change. Why in the world? There's people like Tallarico got dozens of houses out there, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000. Year after year, it just goes up. Nobody says nothing. The Langans on North Washington, they owe $100,000 year after year. Nobody tries to collect it. That Scranton investors, I think they're on Boulevard, they owe like $150,000. It just goes up. Nothing's ever done. And Thomas Hill, I think it's on Linden Street, he owed $161,000. This is all over the city. There's large amounts of money, and nobody does a thing about it. If you collected all this money, we wouldn't have our taxes doubled like they have been under this administration. You want to know why? It's because of Friends of the Courtright administration. That's why this is allowed. I'd like anybody out there to find me another city like Scranton where all these injustices against the taxpayers are tolerated. We got an absentee mayor for 4 years. As I've been, like I said, I think Lackawanna College has run the city with Hermoso, and Bozzoni's just whatever he's told, he does. He sure isn't any asset to anything. My son has a computer. He has been unable to find a city that has lost over a third of its taxable properties like this, and nothing being done except it's allowed. Every couple weeks, somebody buys something else for one of these phony non-taxable entities. Well, I guess that's the city I live in. But I don't understand why I have to pay taxes and these people have to pay taxes, and thousands of people that owe $1 million or more in taxes that haven't been paid in years are allowed to vote. Why should they be able to vote for anything? We have to pay for the street lights and the paving, whatever, and these people get the same thing and don't pay taxes. And it's your fault, it's the man downstairs' fault, because that's all his supporters. It's just gotten completely out of hand. I went down Bromley yesterday, North Bromley Avenue. There's people hanging onto those poor old dilapidated houses by their fingertips, and the person I talked to told me they're expecting higher taxes, especially if you have a reassessment. Some of those houses are just next to being condemned. Well, if you allow me just a second more, I'd like to...
Mr. Elman, you can't start another thought. I'm sorry.
I'd like to just give my condolences to someone that died. This young lady that was in the paper for ODing, I can just imagine how hard it is for that family, because this is such a problem even here in town. It's just heartbreaking to read those things. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Joan Hodawan, Scranton. I saw with pleasure in Monday's paper the summary of the 2016 audit. And I noted under other financing sources, sale of sewer authority, $66,519,966. Was that entire amount put into a trust or a lockbox?
Yes, it's been separated because we still have some money that hasn't been spent yet, but it's in separate bank accounts.
Okay. Then I'm still confused by the controller's August report, which I'm mentioned to you last week, and I'm sure you've had a chance to review. How is it that as of August 31st, the city's expenditures exceed revenues by more than $21 million?
I do have an explanation from the business administrator, and I'll read that in motions for you.
Okay, because that's very troubling. I mean, if that's the refinancing of the bonds for which they spent $28 million, I don't understand why that didn't come out of the sewer sale proceeds and why it would cause such a dip in revenues that would be coming from other sources. And I know you're coming into the budget season for next year, so I would really like some explanation on that. I was also pleasantly surprised to see on September 25th a letter to the editor from the state's Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, commenting on the city's request to review the sewer sale. And basically he said, we're reviewing the issue, and when our investigation is completed, we will communicate our findings. Which says to me is this is not necessarily a dead issue. For a while there, when we heard nothing from the Attorney General, I thought, well, you know, they're not going to do anything. Well, maybe there's a possibility they will come down and review and audit that entire fiasco. And I sure hope the city has a plan B prepared in case somebody says there's a problem with the sale of the sewer authority. Because if everybody's just plodding around saying, oh, you know, everything's fine, don't worry, be happy, I don't think that's the way to go. I was here yesterday morning at 10 o'clock when the bids were opened for the Independent Medical Examination Coordinator, which is the rewrite of the third-party administrator for the pension funds. There was only one bid. It was Vocational Rehabilitation Incorporated, which is based up in Clarks Summit. President is a Thomas Bowles, and he listed on his paperwork 3 employees. Their fee schedule was $85 an hour, plus mileage, tolls, and parking fees. So if you kick in the parking fees, they're going to make a lot of money per hour. But that, having said that, this is not, I think, the nationally recognized firm that the mayor promised us on March 18th, 2016. But hopefully this will open the floodgates to move some of that money into the pension fund so they can start making interest in the stock market. With regard to the capital budget, I know one of your items on the agenda tonight is the resolution to buy the property on Wyoming Avenue, and I saw in the backup that the price was $375,000. Does that mean you're going to adjust the figures in the capital budget where it says acquire that property for $450,000? So that should free up some money there. So before you pass that, is there going to be some clarification on the capital budget? Because you got 2 different actions on the same property. One to transfer the deed for $375,000, the other one to acquire the property for $450,000. I would like to see that cleared up. What happened to the Knowles insurance list, which has now been promised to me for 6 months?
We have it. It's being routed around to the various department heads for final review, and then we should have it probably by next week.
That's been told me more than
Well,
once.
we have the physical document, but the cabinet members and department heads haven't seen it yet.
Okay, well, I'll be back again next week asking about it. And I saw the paperwork on the 2018 MMO, $13.5 million. In today's budget terms of a 2017 budget of $108 million, that would be 12.5% of this year's budget. So it's going up. Thank you.
Good evening, Marie Schumacher. I'm here to speak on and against 5C and the capital budget, which was taken off the table, and I didn't get the ordinance number. I'd like to start tonight by reading something because well, I'll read it and then explain. This is from a Times article titled County to Research, Contaminated Sites. It's dated December 19th of last year. Lackawanna County's Economic Development Team identified the first 2 contaminated sites in Scranton and Carbondale that could eventually return to productive uses through an EPA program, with more on the way. The federal agency awarded a $500,000 grant to Lackawanna County Redevelopment Authority in Scranton last year to inventory and conduct environmental assessments on dormant brownfield sites. Dropping down a bit, the grant funds roughly 22 preliminary assessments of properties during which staff will research the history of the sites, 10 follow-up assessments by engineers to better understand contamination issues, and creation of 9 remediation plans. Mr. Kelly intends to use the remediation plans to get more funding from the EPA to solve the contamination problems at the sites, freeing the properties from the burdens that so far kept the developers away. One of those 2 sites, of course, was Wyoming and Linden. Now, last week, it was stated that the county has $500 million to remediate the property in question. I don't believe that government can work that fast from last December beginning and having the money. But even giving the benefit of the doubt that there is $500,000 laying around someplace that is able to be applied to that project, I believe that taking this property off the tax rolls would take us also off the list of what the county's trying to do, because the county's goal is to put the properties back on the tax rolls. And we are, if you pass the legislation, you're taking the properties off the tax rolls. So they would no longer be eligible for redevelopment because they're not being redeveloped into anything economic anyway. Also, I had told you I contacted the DEP, and I verified that as of yesterday afternoon, we are still have a deficiency. Those properties are still deficient. It's called a technical deficiency, and the following is needed to complete your submission. The department requests the vapor intrusion pathway has not been evaluated at the courthouse located across Forest Court, southeast of the property boundary. Additional soil samples are required to delineate the horizontal and vertical soil contamination of PCE and TCE concentrations that were above the MSC at the property boundary and determine whether the vapor pathway is incomplete. So we have two items. We have vapor and we have soil. And unless somebody can tell me tonight how much the city has in reserve to remediate that lot and then turn it into a essentially nonprofit, I think you have an obligation to the taxpayers of this city to not go ahead with this program. If anybody would like to look at the documents, they're public documents from DEP, and as I say, they were valid as of yesterday afternoon, and I am very, very much against us taking on the liability and taking those properties off the tax rolls. We need to add things, not take them off. And I'll hold the rest of my comments for next week because I think that single item is huge. And that's all I want to speak on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Norma Jeffries, Scranton taxpayer. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I just came to listen. And but I want to thank the gentleman for his service. You know, he is a veteran, I think he had said, and I just was taken, and it hit my heart that, you know, that he was up here. So I wanted to thank him publicly for his service, which I did back there as well. But I want to also piggyback on what he was saying about Puerto Rico, and that the event that they're going to be having in Nayak Park, and some of the things I did ask him to write down, some of the things that they would like to collect up at Nayak Park. I think it's Sunday. It's Sunday, October the 1st, and they would like non-perishable items, rice, diapers, and water is some of the things that he wrote down. So I just thought I would piggyback on what he had said, because we do like to recognize our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes, I'll be very brief tonight. Just one item I want to elaborate a little bit more on. We did have our public hearing regarding the 2018 Community Block Grant funding earlier today. I spent quite a bit of time reviewing the documents associated with this plan. As I mentioned during the hearing, we will vote on this plan again tonight for the second reading, and then it will be tabled for a comment period. As was mentioned in the hearing, we are going to look into to see if any adjustments can be made regarding a Veterans Park that I think all of us support. It's a question of whether HUD will allow those dollars to be used for that source. But I do want to talk a little bit more in broader strokes about the Community Development Block Grant Program. I think it's something that the average resident doesn't realize how much this program does for them. And it's critical, and I'm pleading with everyone out there to contact their representatives, Congressman Cartwright, Senator Toomey, and Senator Casey, to ask them to continue to support Community Development Block Grant funding. This money really is a lifeline for the city of Scranton. They're your tax dollars, your federal tax dollars coming home to help the residents within the city of Scranton. Just a couple items that are funded pretty much on a yearly basis through this program. One that's very popular is the neighborhood police patrols. 4 of Scranton's police officers are funded by the federal government, your federal tax dollars through this program. Without CDBG funds, the city would either have 4 less police officers out on the beat, or we would have to use city tax dollars to pay for those officers. We're currently paying for a new fire truck, in part with federal dollars. The city, I believe, just this week, finally had the first new truck in decades. There's no secret that infrastructure and equipment was something that the city put on the back burner over the past 10 years while we had different financial struggles. But this is an important piece of equipment that if, God forbid, one of us has a fire at our house or needs it, it's there for us. Little Leagues. Various Little Leagues through my tenure on council and previous have received funding from Community Development Block Grant dollars. The one I think that affects everyone every day is the road paving. As Mr. Preamble mentioned during our caucus, $7.6 million has been spent of federal dollars to pave 415 city blocks. Again, I can't stress it enough. It's not free money. It's your federal tax dollars, but it's important that Scranton gets their share and that we get these projects for our people. There's a number of other items on here on the list, many different camps to help children, different housing for women, different program skills to teach individuals to get them back into the workforce. There's a whole slew of programs that are funded through this allotment. So I guess this will be my yearly plea, just to ask everyone to ask their representatives to continue to support this program. And I would ask, if it's okay with my colleagues, that we send a letter as a council to both Congressman Cartwright and our 2 senators asking this for the same support of this program. And that is all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogan. Mr. Evans?
Thank you. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Civil War Museum that we talked about last week. I'd like to thank Councilman Gahn again for bringing the situation with the Civil War Museum to the forefront. After our discussion last week, I felt it was time that I make a visit to the Civil War Museum in the basement of City Hall. So last Saturday afternoon, I did just that. I met with 2 very nice gentlemen, Mr. Myers and Mr. O'Malley, who were kind enough to give me a tour and explain their role and the role of the museum in the community. First of all, while the artifacts stored there are very extensive and very interesting, what I found even more important was a story that can be told. You see, the museum is not just a Civil War museum. It really is a story about Scranton and how our forefathers, in many cases the leaders of Scranton at the time, and how they were involved in the Civil War. In fact, 4 mayors whose pictures hang on the walls of these chambers fought in the Civil War, something I would not have known without visiting the museum. Additionally, the location is vital because the museum's connection and partnerships with the Scranton Public Library and the Lackawanna Historical Society. Dozens and dozens of children each year have had the opportunity to learn about a history about Scranton that they simply weren't aware of, mostly because of that connection with the library, of course, and the Historical Society. But to me, what is even more impressive is the dedication of the volunteers to this mission. They should be commended for all that they do. And I want them to know they can count on me as an advocate now and in the future, along with my fellow councilmen. So again, to the curators of the Civil War Museum, thank you for all that you do for keeping our history and some of our story alive. Another of my favorite topics, reassessment. Most likely I'll be saying something every week on the subject until Election Day. Tonight I'd like to reinforce some of my comments from last week because I think they bear repeating. The 2 days of educational sessions on reassessment I think get underway next week, so I would urge all of our property owners to be as informed as possible when voting on this matter in November. As you may now know, the ballot question reads, shall the Lackawanna County Commissioners incur debt not to exceed $13 million solely for the purpose of conducting a county-wide revision of assessment so that all real estate within the county will be assessed at a predetermined ratio of 100% of a new base year value. So now that you have totally glazed over after I read that question, this is my interpretation of what those who are against reassessment really want you to take from that question. In simplest terms, they are saying, let us borrow $13 million so we can raise your taxes. I would ask that you only do not take the bait on what I believe is a question that is crafted solely to solicit a no vote. First of all, the $13 million cost, in my mind, remains a phantom number and not based in reality. Because of all the required work, the field work has been completed on every parcel throughout Lackawanna County during the last attempt at reassessment 8 years ago. So most likely that information only needs to be revised. It certainly doesn't need to be completely redone. Therefore, the cost is more likely to be closer to $5 million, not $13 million. So again, I ask of our voters and our property owners, take the time to be as informed as you can, and if you do, I think you will choose to vote for tax equity for everyone by voting yes for reassessment. On pensions, I haven't talked about this in a little while. This is something that I did talk about at length, and I'd like to revisit. I have been a proponent of offering all non-union personnel and cabinet members the option of enrolling in a 401k or a defined contribution style plan. I first proposed this idea over 3 years ago when I was appointed to City Council. We learned only recently, just prior to our August recess, in fact, that a change would have to be made at the state level to language in our 2A code that discusses pensions. Currently, the law only discusses defined benefit pensions and is silent on defined contribution plans. This occurred mostly because 401k style plans were not available for the government employees at that time. So I would like to send a letter to Senator Blake to see if his office can review this situation and if they would entertain legislation in the Senate to correct this deficiency, as well as State Representatives Flynn and Haggerty to do the same in the House. As we move beyond Act 47, we need to do more to prepare ourselves for exiting distressed status. This is just one of many things we need to take action on. But it's something that I view truly is in an entrepreneurial spirit. But it's also something that's doable. So with the help of our state elected officials, maybe we can finally get this one thing done. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Gahan?
Yes, thank you. My first comment is Pedro. I can't remember your last name, but I just want to thank you for coming and speaking tonight, and want to wish you the best of luck as the chairman for the Human Relations Commission. And I agree with everything you said, specifically the tragedy in Puerto Rico. My heart goes out to all of those who were affected, number one, and number two, I would hope that just as we came together to give for the victims of Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane, what was the other one? I can't remember. Irma, Hurricane Harvey and Irma, that when we came together for that, we will do the same thing for Puerto Rico, because I think it's very important. So I want to thank you for coming up and speaking on that. I would like to make a motion to send correspondence to Amazon's Office of Economic Development supporting Penn's Northeast submittal of an application requesting the Amazon headquarters to be located in Scranton or in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second on the question.
Yes, on the question. Penn's Northeast, which is a regional economic development agency, is going to be making an application to Amazon so that they would consider us for their site to build a second headquarters. As I've mentioned over the last 2 or 3 weeks, this would bring roughly 50,000 jobs to the area. The average income for a position would be close to $100,000. So I think it's a great opportunity for the city of Scranton and the region to try to attract this type of business to the area. Amazon has asked that the communities submit sites for consideration, and that Penn's Northeast is asking the council support this project by writing a letter to Amazon. So we are going to do that, and I would hope my colleagues would support that. The letter is due by October 6th. And just an interesting side note, once I started talking about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was in the newspaper, I was approached by somebody from Marywood who said that, or suggested that the School for the Deaf campus would be a great location for Amazon campus, a potential satellite site. So I think this is important, and I think it's important that we continue to promote the city of Scranton and the region. Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, so moved.
Thank you. On the Civil War Museum, I thank Mr. Evans for his comments. This is something that I've been speaking about now for the last few months. I'm very passionate about it because I think it is important. The mayor did respond through his secretary that he is working with the law department on a lease agreement, so I'd like to thank him for that. And I'm hoping that we get the lease agreement before us, before the election. So I'm going to look forward to vote on that in the next few weeks. The Attorney General update, I think Joan mentioned that. There was an article or a letter to the editor from Attorney General Josh Shapiro, and I'd like to thank him for notifying all of us that he is taking this serious. The Attorney General's office is taking the review of the sale of the sewer authority very serious. So I'm going to look forward to whatever findings they have and their review. Just a couple citizens' complaints. There were large potholes on Knox Road, so if we could please send a letter to the DPW to try to take care of that issue. We have several neighbors complaining about a halfway house in the 1600 block of Church Avenue. We had 2 requests for stop signs, one a 3-way stop sign at Church Avenue and Ferdinand Street, and a stop sign request at Walnut Street and Sanderson Avenue, so we have forwarded that along to the city engineer. Also, some quality of life issues have been reported several times in the 100 block of Pequest Drive in South Scranton. I have been getting several complaints from the Hill Section residents about Penzi, who is doing paving work in that area, the utility companies. The residents cannot understand why the city is not forcing the issue and making this company restore the streets back to their original condition. So I am going to reach out once again to the DPW and to our pave cut inspector to see if we can reconcile this, because it is a big issue and there are several people, pretty much all the neighbors in that area, who are extremely upset. And that's all I have for this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gohan. Just a few items. Just following up on the Attorney General. I read the the letter to the editor in the paper also on Sunday. Now, we have not received anything formal in our office from the Attorney General, so we will reach out to them again this week to see exactly what the plan is with that. But just as a caution, we saw last week that the Attorney General came to Scranton last week, and that was at the end of probably a 1.5 to 2 year investigation. So I would not expect to see anything right away from the Attorney General's office. If it comes, that'd be great, but I don't anticipate anything coming within the next 2 weeks or so. I don't see that happening. Members of the Green Ridge Neighborhood Association had sent an email out saying that they are not going to pursue their lawsuit against the use of the leachate line in Green Ridge. I spoke to the Neighborhood Association president this week, and back in earlier this year, we had suggested the possibility that we request that now that Pennsylvania American Water owns the line, that they voluntarily stop using the leachate line. Mayor Courtwright also expressed his support for that. As of right now, we don't plan to do anything, put that request back in motion. I did speak to the president over there, and just to make sure that it's what the neighbors want in Greenridge. I'd like to know what they want to do now that they're not going to do proceed with the lawsuit. I would like to have input from the neighbors over in Greenridge to see what they would like city council to do. I'm speaking for myself only. I would pursue, if they authorize it, contacting the water company to see if they would find a way that they minimize the use of that line or stop using the line altogether, if that's possible. So we're just hoping to see, what direction the neighborhood group wants to give us there. Last week, we had some concerns expressed about the development on West Mountain in regards to the PP&L power station. We got in touch with City Planner Don King and asked him, a lot of the trees were torn up there and if they're going to be replaced. And according to Mr. King, by federal guidelines, there has to be a buffer between the trees and the power lines. In New England, a few years ago, the amount of trees were lessened, and during a big storm, the trees fell down and knocked down the whole power line, the transmission line. So Mr. King assured me that the amount of trees that have been removed up there are in conjunction with federal guidelines in order to protect the line from storm damage from trees falling. And I did receive one complaint this week concerning the drainage ditches up on Derby Avenue and up on East Mountain, where the Friendship House used to be. There is a large a gutter there that's really in need of some defoliation. The weeds have grown up there all summer long, and the residents are hoping that we can get something done before the snow flies. That's all I have.
Can I just mention one more thing? I'm sorry, I completely forgot. I forgot to answer Joan's question about the revenue and expenditures. So I just want to read the email from Mr. Bolzoni. He says that the two deviations are as follows. The city exceeded the budget because we began to account for various one-time revenues, such as insurance reimbursement, LSA grant funding, and that specific line item. Those items were captured in a variety of line items in the past. Pages 14 and 15 identify the approximate amount that I referenced, which was, I think, it was over by about 20 or 21 million. He says that the city used sewer proceeds to defease or pay off debt. The city either budgeted a nominal amount for debt service or a lesser number, since the city knew that they would have to repay that debt in its entirety. Budgeting the entire amount would have created an aberration in the budget and would have required an offsetting revenue item when one was not necessary. Generally, the city uses the fund balance or realized sewer proceeds to repay the debt, but the actual payoff needed to be accounted for, hence a situation where you have $1,000 budgeted for debt service and roughly $7 million in actual payments. So there is no deficit. The fund balance was the offset. Thank you.
5B, for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Scranton Electric Heating and Cooling Service Incorporated for plumbing services for the City of Scranton Fire Department Facility Improvement Project.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
5C for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Scranton Electric Heating and Cooling Service Incorporated for HVAC services for the City of Scranton Fire Department Facility Improvement Project.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
5D for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Mike Walsh Electrical Incorporated for electrical services for the City of Scranton Fire Department Facility Improvement Project.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
5E for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Keystone Quarry Incorporated to provide the city 2,000-ton, more or less, anti-skid sand for the period October 25, 2017 through April 30, 2018.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
5F for introduction of resolution appointment of Jessica Rothschild, 244 Putnam Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18508, as a member of the Human Relations Commission effective September 12, 2017. Ms. Rothschild will be replacing Reverend Catherine Simmons, who resigned on August 7, 2017. Ms. Rothschild will fill the unexpired term of Reverend Catherine Simmons, which is scheduled to expire on October 18, 2018.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? I have gotten to know Ms. Rothschild over the past couple years. I think she'll be an excellent addition to our Human Relations Committee. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, file of the council number 118, 2017, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate officials of the city of Scranton to take all necessary actions to implement the consolidated submission for community planning and development programs to be funded under the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnership Program, and Emergency Solutions Grants Program for the period beginning January 1, 2018.
You've heard reading of title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
I would like to make a motion to table item 6A to allow OECD to comply with a 30-day public comment period as required by HUD.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to table item 6A. On the question?
Yes, on the question. I just wanted to mention one thing about the CDBG applications. First of all, I think that the presentation that was given by Mr. Pat Ahern tonight was a very good one, and I fully support the Veterans Memorial Park that they want to put at Scranton High School. I think it's important for a few different reasons. Number one, I think according to his presentation, this isn't just a park. It's not just a memorial. It is also an educational park. It's an opportunity for I think especially the young people in the community, those students who will be directly affected at Scranton High School, to be able to physically see all of the people from the city of Scranton who gave their lives in the defense of the United States. So I think that's really important. I think that, as I mentioned to Mrs. Abley, I would like to see if we can get a special exception from HUD to be able to try to fund this, maybe not in its entirety, but to at least try to help these gentlemen out and to get this park started. So I'll be interested to see Mrs. Abley's response and HUD's response in the next few weeks, and hopefully we can accommodate these gentlemen and help them fund this park. Thank you.
I would agree wholeheartedly with those comments, and anytime we have a chance to honor veterans, we certainly should do it, especially in this day and age when, in my opinion, a lot of veterans aren't getting the respect that they deserve. Look forward to seeing HUD's reply, and then council will act accordingly once we hear back from HUD.
Yeah, I also agree that this project should get all the help that it can. The thing that I'm concerned about is the timely response from the federal government in terms of what we're allowed to do and not to do, because just as a caution, if we do get the go-ahead to give any funding to this project at all, there really has to be an offset to the other programs that have already been determined at this time to be beneficiaries of the program. So hopefully the answer will get back to us in time from HUD that we can, or from community development, and hopefully we can get back and make the adjustments to the plan if we have to do that in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we all know that funding is a balancing act at best, but if we can find a way to help, I think we all agree that that's the right thing to do. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think also at this time we should also look at other ways that we can possibly help this program. If there's other monies available that may be dormant or something like that, that we can help this project out as best we can, because I know everyone would like to show respect to the people who have gave their life for our country. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
6B, reading by title, file of the council number 119, 2017, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the City of Scranton Police Department, and, if successful, a grant agreement, and accept the funds related thereto through the BJA FY17 Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant Program, local solicitation in the amount of $19,133.
You've heard reading by title on item 6B. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6B pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
6C, reading by title, file of the council number 120, 2017, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute the deed conveying title from RSM Properties LLC, the property located at 248-256 Wyoming Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, to the city of Scranton, as more fully described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and made a part hereof.
You have heard reading by title of item 6C. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6C pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the council number 117, 2017, creating and establishing special city account number as noted entitled Lindy Creek Flood Project 2017 for the receipt and disbursement of matching grant funds from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for rehabilitation assistance for the Lindy Creek Flood Project.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, resolution number 190, 2017, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to apply for and execute a grant application by the City of Scranton and, if successful, accept the funds related thereto through the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for a local share account grant, gaming funds, Monroe County, in the amount of $75,000 to be used to develop a Chesapeake Bay pollution reduction plan.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 191, 2017, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with CC Cleaning Services for janitorial services for Scranton City Hall and the Scranton Police Headquarters for a one-year period.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, on the question. I'm going to be voting against this contract. We did receive an explanation from Director Hinton earlier today. I just don't feel that this is a prudent use of taxpayer money at this time. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
No.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D, previously tabled for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the Council Number 116, 2017, approving and accepting the City of Scranton capital budget for the year 2018 pursuant to Section 904 of the city's Home Rule Charter.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.